Do you think we're in the right place?
Well, that's what the guy at the desk said.
Why? Oh, wait. I see someone now.
Bandland Records presents live. Well, live in front of a artificial audience. Well, we're at the Beamsville International Hotel and Ball. Live from the Beamsville International Hotel and Ballroom. You're in the lounge. And now here he is, your host, Frank. Okay, you know what? Am I the only person that giggles when they hear sperm whale? Well, I mean, like, the only person over 12? Okay. Oh. Yeah, I guess she was right. Okay, well, here's the thing. Where I live near a rural area. Lots of farms. Niagara is a green belt here in southern Ontario, and we have lots of grapes, lots of wineries. In fact, I have a just across the street from me there, and down the hill there is a vineyard, and so it's about 400, 500 feet from my front door. There's a pond there. And have you ever heard those air cannons that they put out in farmers' fields to like scare away the birds and stuff? You know, where they used to have the scarecrows and stuff, and then they start putting like the tinsel out so it made like bright sparkly things, and then now they got these air cannons that sound like a real cannon went off. Well, they put one of these in, and it pauses, and when it goes off like 3 times, like in a row. And like if you're out there like doing something in the front lawn and you're not ready for it, it scares a little bit bejeebies out of you, and it's driving me crazy. So if I seem like I'm in a weak mental state, it could be because of that. Okay. Yeah, I just finished playing ball hockey for the season. Last game, very warm. Getting far too old for this. I think I'm going to have to take up one of those more sedentary sports, like those older gentlemen who play chess in the park. I don't want to jump to conclusions. These guys could be like real badass, and stuff like that. I could be like biting off more than I could chew right there. So, but I got to do something before I hurt myself. You know what I mean? What else is new? Well, I tell you what, I'm trying to cut down on desserts. I love desserts. I absolutely love desserts. But, I could buy a chocolate bar every time I walk out of the house. But, you know what, I'm trying to cut back on the sugar. So, like, I'm eating a lot better. I don't have half the buzz as the sugar content, but I'm eating better, and so in the long term, this should mean better health and staying in shape and not having to work so hard at staying in shape, but not that trying to give up desserts is not hard work. Trust me. Trust me. You know what? I don't drink or smoke or do anything like that. I need the sugar. I need it. I need it. Okay, well, you know what, let's, oh, my. Oh, you know what, the grocery store that's not too far from me, their bakery has this, I love pie, by the way, pie. They have this apple caramel cranberry crumble, like with the oats and brown sugar rather than the regular pie crust on top. Oh, you know what, I could buy like a 12-inch one of those, and like that would be like all my meals for like a day and a half. Hence why I'm trying to cut back. I seem to lack self-control. Yes, I seem to lack self-control. Well, you know what I'm going to do here now? I'm going to go to commercial break, and when I come back, I'll be introducing my very special guest star this week. So please stay tuned. I'll be right back.
A single soul in the evening, having pulled myself through the day. See so many others just like me, nowhere to go but going anyway. They carve out a place from the darkness, but the hole in their heart's there to stay, 'neath the city lights. I think it'd be hard to feel lonely with so many places to be, and each pinpoint its own invitation, shining for everyone to see. Behind every point is a story, and a park may be waiting for me 'neath the city lights. The city lights. Spent all summer growing closer to shades and illusions, and distracted by the flickering ghosts I've been watching so long. And how could I ever hope to survive, thinking I'm fine, just marking time and barely alive? So this is the path that I've chosen, with its risk and its dangers unknown. Going out toward those points in the distance, looking behind them on my own. And every clean, well-lighted place may be where what I hope for's overthrown. But it's better than being alone in the city lights. In the city lights. I can't tell you where I'll be, but maybe I'll find you as we cast our banner sails into the night.
Welcome back to the lounge, guys. The song that you just heard was called City Lights, and it was written and performed by my very special guest this week, singer, songwriter, entertainer, a man who's very popular in the indie online circuits, circles that I frequent myself. He's known for his wit and is always good for thoughtful feedback, and willing to offer up some good constructive feedback for other aspiring artists. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please welcome Mr. Steve Watchorn?
Thanks, Frank. It's great to be back in the lounge again for the second time. Hopefully less violent than the first time. So, for those who are in the know, yes. Yeah,
for those who aren't in the know, look for a video on Bandland that Steve and I are both on. You'll find it on my profile page. I think you'll be very amused at what you see. We had a lot of fun doing it.
That was good. And if you see it, you'll be glad to know that, like after most guy fights, Teddy and I had a couple brewskis and patched things up, and now we're really good friends.
Well, it's good to hear, because you don't want to carry those things over.
Yeah.
Don't go to bed angry.
Never a good idea to do that. So yeah, he's sitting right back. Actually, he's behind me right now, in my little home studio nook. So we're doing all right. He keeps me in line though.
Excellent. So, how long have you been writing your own music, Steve?
So that's a really good question. I should start by saying I am actually not a musician. I am not really able to play any of my instruments live in front of people. I've never practiced that much, put so much work into it that I can do that. My day job is as a research scientist, and so I do this sort of in my spare time. I've really been doing it. There's sort of two sections. I did it a lot in elementary school. I always had an affinity. I never had a particularly musical family, but I always had an affinity for cadence and rhythm and getting snatches of phrases and turning them into songs. In fact, in elementary school, I actually wrote several songs with a couple friends of mine. Actually, one friend of mine in particular, we had a music group called Menachem Begin and the Three Wastebasks, which is a name he got from a Mad Lib that he did with his brother back then. Kids, you can look up Mad Lib on Wikipedia in case it's out of date now.
Yeah,
but
you never know.
Anyway, we wrote a few songs. There was one about how everybody got, when we were going through the lunch line one day at the hot lunch program at school, and the lunch ladies, we were asking about what food we get, and the lunch lady says everybody gets peas. And so I said, that's a great idea for a song. And so I wrote a song called Everybody Gets Peas, which we subsequently performed for the lunch ladies. Also wrote a song that was included in one of our fourth grade plays because the teachers liked it so much. It was sort of a transposed variation on the Lolly 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 Get Your Adverbs Here from Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock, yes. Remember it well.
Yes.
We date ourselves here.
Yes, exactly. Kids, please don't turn off the show just yet. We'll get into the 21st century eventually.
Yeah.
But it was about being hungry, and it was called like Mommy got an appetite. And the teachers liked that so much they put it in the fourth grade school play that we did, even though the play was actually in Spanish. They let us sing the song in English, which is how much they liked it, I suppose. So I was all through elementary school. I was doing things like that. And then for a long time, I just sort of dropped it. I didn't really do much. It was a pretty stark choice about the time. Actually, in junior high school, I was in choir. I wasn't writing my own music, but I was actually involved in singing and performing. And actually, we did some fairly extensive work for junior high choir, including going to Chicago and competing in a high school competition my seventh grade year. But when we got to high school, I had to choose. We only had 5 hours in the day when I was in high school, when I started high school. And we had two tracks. I had one track that got us to calculus, which wasn't a required class at the time. And so you had to go through a special accelerated math sequence to get to it. And you had to take a particular class in 9th grade to start that sequence. And there was also choir, which also required a particular 9th grade class. And the only sections of those two classes were at exactly the same time. So I had to choose very, very clearly one or the other. And I chose the accelerated math track. So that's which I enjoyed. I got a lot out of it, but I had to give up choir as well for a while. So I wasn't really doing anything particularly musical for probably until about 1998, which is about 10 years after I graduated high school, and about 20 years, or 15 to 20 years after I was doing this burst of creativity in elementary school. And then I very particularly remember I was in grad school in physics. We were testing out we were going to fire off a sounding rocket payload, which is a sort of payload that flies into very low Earth orbit in space, or low Earth trajectory in space. Mm. And we were down testing that at a NASA facility in Maryland, and we were at the facility. We were driving up to the lunch cafeteria, and it had been raining for a while, and there were puddles all over the parking lot. And there were no parking spots nearby where it was dry. They were near the cafeteria. Those had all been taken, so we had to park. So we were looking for a parking space farther away, and one of the guys in the car says, what are we going to do? And I piped up and said, park in a puddle, walk in the rain. Just sort of tossing that off. And all of a sudden, I thought about it for about 5 minutes later and said, that's a pretty good song lyric. And before the end of the trip, I made up this whole song related to that was completely a different story, but it started with that one line. And that's the point where I started collecting these songs again. I would start seriously putting them together in my head again, and it's just taken off from there. It was a couple of years later that I got the keyboard that I use now in my composition, and then it was last year that I got the software, the Pro Tools software that enabled me to start putting all this into recorded form on a more consistent basis. I had been recording out of the keyboard itself, but it was on an old floppy drive and required me to play everything in right there and mix it on the board, which is pretty primitive. So there wasn't really a good way to put voice to that, so it was all instrumental. So it's only been in about the last year and a half, 2 years, getting towards 2 years now, that I've been putting all this together in the way that it's heard on the late Labended Lime Booth and also on YouTube and the songs you're playing here.
Yeah, because your music has a very full feeling to it that someone listening would likely have no idea that you weren't a classic instrumentalist, for lack of a better term. So you sit there with the keyboard and you're simulating a lot of the sounds of the different instruments and piecing it all together track after track. And
well, there are a couple ways to do it. One is, for one thing, the thing that really saves me, because I can't play live, as I mentioned, is that you can record and re-record and re-record and eventually get it right. So I took a little bit of piano in high school. I called it recreational piano because there was no intention of me ever becoming a real concert pianist, but it was enough study and enough work that I never really got into things like fingering or proper stance and things like that, but I can sort of work my way around a keyboard fairly well. So what I really use is this Yamaha keyboard. It's MIDI capable, and so there are two ways I can record with it. One is I can actually just put an audio patch cable between the board and the computer and let the computer record just like as if it were a tape recorder, whatever sound is coming out of the keyboard. So if I'm having the keyboard play a flute or some kind of synth lead or an explosion or something, that's what the computer will record. In fact, in my song "Something Ridiculous," which you played last week, there are a few of those explosions actually show up in the background of that soundtrack.
Yes.
And the other way to work with this then is to use the MIDI output, and MIDI is a particular format. I believe it stands for Multiple Instrumental Digital Interface or something like that. But it's this particular output that it then can put into my computer, and the software that I'm recording into recognizes that as a MIDI instrument. And so when I start playing in, then what the computer is actually recording is just the length of the note that I'm playing, the pitch, of course, whether it's an A or a B or C or whatever, how sharp it is, how whether there's sustain on it or not, all these things, but it doesn't attach a particular instrument to it unless you choose a particular instrument. So what it's reading in is a note being played at this time for this length with this amount of sustain and this amount of whether it's really a sharply played or slowly played, whether there's pitch bend, all sorts of things, but it doesn't say what the instrument is until you tell it to. So you can theoretically play in a whole track of something, and then later on say, I want it to be a piano, or I want it to be a bassoon, or a violin, or whatever.
Or I guess you could mat it over top of each other, and you could assign two instruments to an instrument to each track, and have it accompany each other.
Yes, and actually, I'm thinking in terms of multiple tracks, because for each track you can assign one instrument to it, and then you can assign another instrument to another track, and you can change what instrument that is. MIDI is actually a very flexible format in that you can change the length of the notes. You can change what note it is. You can move it. You can transpose it up or down. You can transpose whole sections up and down after the fact.
Yeah.
So if I plan something, I make it a piano and it's in the key of D major, and I decide I'd rather have it in E sharp minor, I can do that just by basically taking those notes and pushing them all around. With the audio patch cable idea, I can play in whatever exactly the keyboard is playing, but it's like my voice after the fact. If I want to go back and change it, I have to go back and replay it and re-record it, as opposed to making changes just in the MIDI notes. So MIDI is a pretty powerful tool, especially when I'm getting things together in basic formats, and I'm not exactly sure how I want it to be, but I have a pretty good idea, but it might change as I'm going along. And so that's what MIDI does, and you can assign any MIDI voice you have in your MIDI library, and there's some very good ones available online, as well as the more basic ones that are available with the software packages. So there's some pretty extensive sounds you can add to your MIDI instrumentation. I found that that's very flexible and very it gets me to where I want to be quite a bit faster than I would otherwise.
Excellent.
Especially because and the other thing is, if you make a mistake, if you mistime a hit on your keys, or if you play the wrong note, which I do all the time, and you can actually go back in the MIDI notes and erase notes that are ones you don't want to hit, or push them around, get them into the right note, or even moving them in time so that the timing lines up better. So it's very flexible. The only times I really use the audio patch cables when I just can't get a sound out of MIDI that I can out of the keyboard.
Yeah. You just go and do it the old-fashioned way then in that matter.
For example, I have a song called Mars, where I have a couple solo violins for a while, and I couldn't find a good MIDI violin, and so I just went and played it off of the keyboard.
Huh.
But as I mentioned, it's probably just because I haven't looked closely enough at it yet. But that's the sort of thing where if I wanted to change the notes of those instruments, I would actually have to replay them in whole.
Because it's not it doesn't give you that same format as the MIDI where you can go in and flip flop it. What you've played is what you've played. It's a basic recording, yeah.
So most of my songs are ones where I hear all the different instrumentation, and I like to put them in sum total via the MIDI interface. So that's where most of my, and I've gotten better at that as I've gone along. So I'm actually, City Lights and a few others are ones that I'm actually redoing with a little bit more finesse these days.
Oh. No, I was going to say, like I see from you, what you've said about your beginnings, where I've noticed in listening to some of your tracks that you do seem to have a very theatrical influence to some of the stuff you're writing. But I also noticed with the track I played at the beginning of the show, the City Lights. To me, it conjured up images of people like Jackson Browne, Dan Fogelberg. Would that be accurate in your kind of?
Well, the interesting thing is that for a long time, when I was in elementary school and middle school through high school, I really didn't listen to much pop music. In fact, I was in a stage where one of my big loves is film, and that's been for as long as I can remember. And so, in the early 1980s, in fact, I think it was Christmas of 1981, my mom, or 1982, my mom bought me a couple of movie soundtracks, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Trek II, and those got me hooked onto film scores and film music. And I actually was listening to most of that through the 80s and into the early and mid 90s. Actually, probably, especially in high school, I was a little bit snobbish about it, going, I don't sync to listening to pop music all the time, and I actually listen to this better kind of music, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself, I imagine. But it's also true that during most of the mid to late 70s and early 80s, I was riding around in the back of the car with the radio on. My mom or dad would be choosing the station, or sometimes the bus would also have the radio on. And so I would get absorb these influences of various people, such as Jackson Browne or the Eagles, or Steve Winwood later on. And I tend to respond to that sort of I wouldn't say more complex chord structure, but certainly more variegated chord structure than we get. Just the other day, I was listening to NPR, which is a sort of a little favorite station of mine. They actually have a pretty good variety of programs. Mm-hmm. And there was a story about how a research group in England, I believe, had done a study about the amount of variation in song chords and cadences and instrumentation from the 1960s through today, and they found that it actually had statistically become less likely to hear that sort of varied soundtrack. Things have become much more homogenized in terms of the number of chords chosen, the chord structures used, the instrumentation used in music today, as opposed to in the 60s or the 70s, the 80s. And I always respond to that sort of unusual sort of structures that a lot of the songwriters of the 70s especially had. They were just, able to go off on their own and do things that were
make it a little bit more interesting, because it was getting far more creative when you look to the early days of 3-chord basic rock and roll and stuff, and then as music evolved, it certainly did get more complex. But I can see I completely agree with you that yes, over time it's going back to that simple form again. But what we should do right now, Steve, is we're going to take a quick break for some words from some of our sponsors, and when we come back from commercial, we're going to listen to another track from you. This one is called "Reckless Children of the War."
The fault of the lights at the game arcade. The best minds of my generation MB8. All to eat, just desserts, not the meal that's made at all. I soon found myself by the ocean side. Let my thoughts roll out with the evening tide, till I got to the place with no place to hide at all. Reckless children of the war. Reckless children of the war. Reckless children of the war. They get what they can for the world falls through, with the dark oil slash across the perfect blue, and no joy from the chief or his retinue at all. Now they punch out the air for a figurehead. They can kill who they want, but I'll end up dead, and I still never heard what the thunder said at all. Reckless children of the war. Reckless children of the war. Reckless children of the war. What with all the warnings, stalking, pouring, I'm shocked to see that Goldstein lives after all. He's right there on the TV, in a cave with Snowball, and it feels like falling, always calling danger under every rock they can find. They get more things around them, but not more peace of mind. He's under there, he's underwear. Well, are you scared? You wanna hurl? Well, don't you fret, just grab your pet and board a jet to Disney World. Spend your haul up at the mall on plastic pearls. children of the war. Reckless children of the war. Reckless children of the war.
Okay, we're back in the lounge again. The song you just heard was Reckless Children of the War by my guest this week, Mr. Steve Watchorn. Now that song, Steve, that sort of took on a different feel for me from the stuff that I normally hear you write. Maybe a little bit more of a message, maybe a little bit more of a political influence to it. Am I on track in saying that, or?
I think so. I mean, a song like that, I tend to grab typically snippets of a certain rhythm or a certain cadence when I'm starting to think of a song or a part of a tune that goes with that. And then I start matching words to it. It's almost like a puzzle to see what words fit the best. And sometimes usually the words come from somewhere else. They often come from another song, or they just come from some nonsense phrase that just happens to match the rhythm. I call it the scrambled eggs phase, after the story of how Paul McCartney said that the original words for the chorus of Yesterday, or the song Yesterday,
exactly, yeah.
when it was supposed to be, instead of Yesterday, I believe in Yesterday, it's scrambled eggs, I love your legs. And so that's what I sort of think of that that stage of it. And for Reckless Children, I got that dun, 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 but it actually didn't have quite that tune. But it was following the rhythm of this old Statler Brothers song that I heard on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. That has the line "Counting flowers on the wall, doesn't bother me at all," and so on. And so I started with "Counting flowers on the wall," and then I just started thinking of things that I tend to think of the world every now and then, and so I just started grabbing little bits of sort of the feeling of the time. This was a few years ago when there was still, and there still is to a degree, the sort of miasma in the air of a little bit of fear and a little bit of uncertainty about what's going on. And I started to match that up with things that I knew from literature and from poetry, and basically it turns into a kind of a puzzle for me. I tend to connect to music more through cadence, through rhythm, through the melody. That's it. Insofar as my heart is in music, it tends to be in there through the chord changes or through the melodic structure or through the rhythms. That's just how I really connect to the music. The actual meaning of the lyrics almost is secondary to me. Although it can enhance a song, it's not the prime mover. I'm something of an aesthete or an aesthetic art follower. That is somebody who believes that aesthetics are the fundamental bit of art. And so with a song like Reckless Children, I had a bunch of phrases that I thought were neat, but I started to just try to fit them in the order of where they would go based on the rhythm of the song. I wrote
almost as if you were writing the structure for a poem and stuff like that, and you want to keep everything in the rhythm that it was fitting more. You were finding something to fit to the musical idea that you had, rather than going in the other direction and having this concept go through your head of a message. Yeah,
and I doubt that I doubt that it makes a sort of a logical sense necessarily. It might make some logical sense. It's more like a dream or even a nightmare, kind of just picking things out here and there. And actually, it has that dark feeling that I've come back to in a couple. Well, darker. It's not really dark, but I've come back to in a couple of songs. Mars being one, and Hangman's Holiday being another.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, the next song that I was going to play from your repertoire was a song called Please. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that song?
Well, that one is one that it's represented something. You'll know that when you hear my songs, I don't write songs that I tend to be the one who's going to sing them, or that I would sound the best singing. And Please is a sort of a snarling stadium rock anthem, and certainly my voice is much more attuned to sort of mellifluous smooth sort of songs. But I really liked what really got me on that one was this hook of the electric guitar line, or it could be a bass guitar perhaps, that was just, it started playing very relentlessly, that da da da, that sort of thing, and that goes through the entire song, and I really got hooked on that. And then I, just because I'm something of a contrarian, I decided to put that against the probably the wimpiest pleading lyrics I could think of, where you have this really, the song is almost like a hammer hitting you, but the words are basically like, please don't leave me, please. So it's that contrast really appealed to me. So that's what you'll probably hear when you get into it.
Well, without further ado, let's listen to Steve Watchorn. The song's called Please.
Take my son, I'll do what you want. Please don't take my son, I'll do what you want. I'll do what, 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 I'll do what you want. Please come back again. This can't be the end. Please come back again. This can't be the end. Please look in your heart. We're not that far apart. Please look in your heart, we're not that far apart. Why must you put me through this pointless exercise, when I already see the answer in your eyes? That obvious arm should tell you all you need to know. What you want. Please don't
Okay. And hope you guys all enjoyed that one. That was Please by Mr. Steve Watchorn. As he said, you can see him on YouTube or other sites under the handle Swatch71.
Also, the best way to get to me, Frank, is probably through Facebook. There's a page called Steve Watchorn Music. And apparently, I'm the only Steve Watchorn Music on Facebook, which I'm particularly proud of, I guess.
Well, there you go. Take note of that.
Exactly, and that will get you to all of my YouTube links, and you can sort of follow that down the rabbit hole as far as you want to go.
Sweet. Like it sounds. Do you remember what the first album you ever bought was?
Actually, the albums I got were mainly given to me. I don't know if I actually bought one until probably like the soundtrack to E.T. However, I did buy a 45 once at my local Kmart in about 1977. It was in a bargain bin. It was a rock and roll fantasy. What was the Bad Company?
Bad Company. Well, that's better than me. I think the first 45 I bought was Sean Cassidy, Do Run Run. But
oh dear, well, that's all right. He made it. He made a great. Was he Joe?
Yeah, Joe or Frank Hardy. Yeah.
He was one of. I think he was Joe. But anyway,
Joe. Yeah.
That was his,
that's what I did. Is I actually seen him. He performed it as the character on an episode of the Hardy Boys one weekend, and I was in grade 5 or something like that. And Dad, we got to go buy this.
At least it wasn't David Cassidy.
Yeah. Well, I grew up watching Partridge Family too, so that's, that was going back a few years before that, but
kids, those are the secrets that stay in the 1970s.
Yeah, that's right. It. The Monkees got canceled. I went to the Partridge Family, so it's just one of those things. It was Sonny and Cher, and then it was Donnie and Marie, and so go on and so forth. When I think back, I listened to a lot of terrible music, but so hopefully that hasn't been my biggest influence.
if you enjoyed it at the time, that's all that mattered. Your taste changed. That's the way it goes.
Well, that's true, and that's what does happen is musical taste evolves, and I think it expands a lot too over time.
Yeah, I mean, the Monkees theme I liked very much, by the way.
What we should do now is we should take one more commercial break right now, and when we come back, we're going to play a song called "Stay," which is
different
co-performed with Helen White, who is a singing partner on a lot of Steve's videos. If you take the time to check out some of the links that Steve mentioned, I think you'll like their partnership. Produced some excellent work, so do check that out. So we'll take a word from our sponsors, and then we'll be back with "Stay."
Fall away from everything that's real for one thing that we know.
Love so strong to feel the places we can go.
All we need is strength to wish this world away
and make a better life for us tomorrow.
No one will believe the things we do are coming from the heart.
It's alright if all I need is you. We'll never be apart, not even for a day. We'll find a place to call our own and start from pride I bet judge and scar, but never think to
Far from
see.
where the manner you are born determines who you'll
Must
be.
be someplace where it's not laid out for us, and if there is,
We'll find a way
to go together there and stay.
It's such a pretty dream. I hope it can come true, my
Love,
love.
if it's our only dream, I know it can come true.
chances are, if we don't even try just once to break away and explore the land, it's time for us. Just take my hand and we'll fall away from everything that's real, from all they think they know.
Fortunes to reveal the places we will go.
Heading for the sunset, we'll await the break of day. In those nights so full of words that we don't need to say. And the only promise is a promise we will always
Well, that's fantastic, Steve. I really enjoy that. I love listening to you and Helen, to some of the covers that you guys would do on Line Booth when it was up and operating, and you know, just very enjoyable.
Yeah, that was fun. It's definitely fun to work with Helen. It's fun for me to work in that genre because it's closest to these movie soundtracks that I grew up with, that sort of musical.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how that was something I couldn't do without MIDI and without Pro Tools, actually drawing the notes in, and I had no idea how it would turn out. And first, the music turned out well. I thought anyway. I really liked the way it sounded when it was all done. And then originally I sang both parts of it on a longer ago version of it. But it was really took off when Helen, who's a fantastic singer and a great person to work with, actually made the suggestion that she might sing that part. And that was the first time I collaborated over the internet. With taking someone else's vocal and putting it into locally.
Oh, so that was
my own
was the first one you guys had done together.
Oh yeah, it was. It was actually the one where she actually messaged me and said she might like to try the female part. That would be interesting. I said, sure, go ahead. Previously, I had somebody else record through a webcam. That was Sarah's performance of Something Ridiculous. But this was the first time I actually took in the remote vocal and mixed it in with my own and with the music locally and tried to make it all sound of a piece. And boy, did it sound of a piece. That really inspired me. That's how I got into putting on the other song. I have this whole idea for, at least I have some spec songs for a Titanic musical version, an adaptation of the 1997
Yes,
movie.
yeah, I like that. I've listened to that. I really enjoy that.
And this is sort of what this turning out so well is what led to those other ones. There are like 4 songs that I put down so far, and I have a 5th one in my head that's going to be a little harder to do because it's a different cadence. It's more like a tango.
Yeah.
But that's all. That all was inspired by how well this turned out, and Helen was a big part of that. So.
All right. Now here's something that I like to ask my guests. Now this I think this tells a lot about where the person's at musically and stuff. What 3 CDs come to your head as something that's in your car right now? Or say maybe you might be an MP. I know people of a certain age group like CDs, and then the younger people, they all electronically download. So if it's not CDs, what's on your MP3 player?
Well, it is still CDs in my car. Although my CD player, it's about 10 years old, we'll play MP3s. But I still go mainly with CDs. 3 that I've been listening to recently, The Omen, which is Jerry Goldsmith's Oscar-winning score.
Yes.
Then E.T., which is I got an updated version of. I was listening to that the other day. Also, a 3rd CD I have in the car is actually James Horner's score for Braveheart, which is a favorite of mine.
Yes, we just rewatched that just recently.
Yeah, it's a Mel Gibson's recent antics aside, it's actually a very good film and one of James Horner's best scores, I think. One of it, that and The Rocketeer, and to a degree Star Trek II and Field of Dreams are some of his best work.
Yeah, I'm myself this week. I'm going big time on the Canadian content. I've got the Guess Who's greatest hits, Tragically Hip Road Apples and Jeff Healey Band live at Grossman's.
That's going all in. That definitely is the Canadian content. By the way, I want to pass along my best wishes to Avril Lavigne and Chad Kroeger, who I understand have just got engaged.
Yes, I just saw
Canadian
a little blurb
unions.
on that. That sort of took me by surprise. I hadn't even heard a thing about that.
They were dating. Yeah, exactly. I didn't know they were dating. So,
last I heard, she was dating that fellow from Sum 41 or something.
Well, she married him and got divorced, and and I hadn't heard of anything.
Shows how much I keep up with it.
Any more who does. So, but anyway, that's great for Canada.
All right, on. Well, it's at least we have somebody else making the news besides Justin Bieber, so that's good to start with. But
and Jennifer Aniston, who's also got engaged. As a matter of fact, I saw it on the magazine aisle at the store as you're checking out. One of the tabloid covers said, Jennifer Aniston, wedding of the century, and I went, oh, the wedding of the century. They'll be happy to know that in Britain. It'll be the closest thing they've ever had to a royal wedding there in the 21st century, except for the actual royal wedding. So, anyway, I thought that was pretty amusing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're just about out of time this week. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for coming out and sharing with us this week. I really appreciate it if you come back again sometime. I'd love to have you.
Oh, definitely. I will be around, and I had a great time and would look forward to coming back.
That's super. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take another word from our sponsors. I'm going to come back with some closing comments, and then we're going to close the show with one more song from Steve Watchorn. We'll be right back. Once again, you're back in the lounge. Well, thank you for showing up and joining us this week. Our guest this week was Mr. Steve Watchorn. Please check out his videos, both on his Facebook site and, of course, on bandlandrecords.net. Go to the profiles, find him, as well as taking a look at some of the other indie artists there on the site. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at some of the music that's being produced. And while on the site, please check out the Girls of Bandland Records. Their calendar for 2013 will be available for purchase very soon. You can purchase it right through bandlandrecords.net. And as always, I want you guys to have a great week and be nice to each other. Peace, brother. And now, one more track from Steve Watchorn. This is The Little Things.
The little things I'd never remember, almost too little to say, but I hardly can believe it how they're the things I see now that'll take my breath away. Like your precious half-smile, your leveling stare, little winks that you give me put me walking on air. Maybe it's too much to give that power to only you, but how else can it be? And it's too late to change, already given you me. So little things that you do can make me feel alright or alone. The littlest look, the littlest sound grows tall in my memory. And say the things you can do to the ones you hold the closest are hardest to take back when you finally know that you're sorry. For little things, I don't need a picture. They're much too vivid to lose all these beats that make my heart quicken. You can do it again almost time you choose when your head's on my shoulder to say it's alright. When you whisper you love me as we turn out the light. All these tiny moments, they add up and they add up to more than you could know. Except I'm sure that you do. It's two ways all this goes. The little things that you do can make me feel alright or alone. The littlest look, the littlest sound goes tall in my memory. They say the things you can do to the ones you hold the closest are hardest to take back when you finally know that you're sorry. So look out where they fall, these stones that leave your heart with all. It's like they're dropping from the top of the world to me, and like a minute from 99 stories, the impact can be deadly. Don't you know that's why the little things you do from time to time can bring me down so low, keep me climbing high. But that's just a part that comes with our love. The little things I'll always remember. This must be just what it's like